Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 2 of our review of the America's Animal Pack. So this pack is very special as it takes in a bunch of animals, about 7 from North, Central, and South America. So a lot of animals, people have been wanting for a while, and considering a lot of players, I imagine, are North American, a lot of animals they're probably familiar with. So we already covered the American Flamingo, the Rhea, the Greater Rhea, the Bighorn sheep, and the white-faced Saki before. So now we're covering the remaining 3 animals in this pack. Kind of the big headline, carnivores, because we've got the Ocelot and we've got the bush dog and the Coyote. So let's start with the Ocelot, because I got a lot to say about it. Excuse the puns. But anyway, we've got the Ocelot. So the Ocelot, or Leopardus pallidus, these guys are a medium-sized wildcat that gets about 40 to 50 centimeters, or 16 to 20 inches at the shoulder, and weighs between 7 and 15 kilograms. And these guys are native to southwestern United States, Mexico, Central and South America. It can also be found on the Caribbean islands of Trinidad and Margarita, I believe to say that. So in terms of its taxonomy, this guy, I'll talk about the name first. So the name Ocelot comes from the Nahuti word ocelotl, which actually refers to the jaguar. And another one comes from the Latin olicurus, which means it has like eye spots, but it has many different names depending on where you are in South America. But yeah, its original scientific name was Felis pallidus, which was when it was proposed by Linnaeus in 1758. But the Leopardus was proposed by John Edward Gray in 1842 when he found these cats. And between that time, based mainly on just different skins, there was a dozen or so different subspecies recognized just on skin patterns pretty much alone. Oh no, that's not what we wanted to do. Let's keep that. I hate it when it does that. I want to have a look at you sitting up there because you're in a nice position. Anyway, there's a bunch of different subspecies described, and a lot of groups is looking at the DNA, things like that, and the most recent kind of conclusion on their subspecies status is that now there's 2 subspecies. So the type of subspecies is Leopard pandus pallidus, which is found in Texas, Arizona, and Costa Rica, so basically like the Central American one, and then you have Mitis, which is actually found to be more yellowish and typically a little bit larger, and they are found in South America and is found as far south as northern Argentina. So in terms of how they're related to other big cats, or other different types of cats, phylogenies show that these guys diverged from the Felidae about 8 million years ago, and the Ocelot is obviously has diverged from the margay, which is another species within the genus Leopardus, between 2.4 to 1 million years ago, and which is quite cool. So you can see these ocelots are very much extremely marked with solid black markings and a creamy, tawny yellowish grey or grey background colour, as you can kind of see going on there. The spots on the head and limbs are small, but markings on the back, cheeks, and flanks often open and closed bands and stripes. And there's a few stripes that run down straight to the back, right up to the tip of the tail. Its neck on the undersides are white, with the inside of its legs marked with horizontal streaks, as you can kind of see there, common in more forest cats. It has a round ears that has a bright white spot on the back, similar to that of tigers. Its fur is short, about 0.8 centimeters or about 0.3 inches long on the belly. It can reach a centimeter, about 0.39 inches guard hairs on the back. They also have a notably strong odor. And one cool thing as well is that each ocelot has its own unique pattern, very similar to a fingerprint, or tigers or things like that, so that they're able to use them to ID them. Their eyes, you can't really see that when they're sleeping. That's most of the time that's what they'll be doing when they're sleeping. Don't know what you're doing there, but we'll leave you to it. Their eye colors are typically brown. You can kind of see that there. But also reflect a golden hue when illuminated. They have 28 to 30 teeth, and there's actually one ocelot known to have possessed albinism, but the appearance of such a trait in ocelot is likely an indication of shrinking populations due to deforestation. So in terms of their size and everything, their head to body length ranges from 55 to 100 centimeters, or 22 to 39 inches, with a 30 to 45 centimeter or about 12 to 18 inch long tail, and this makes the ocelot actually the largest member of the genus Leopardus, with other things like the cod and the margay being significantly smaller. And as I mentioned before, they reach about 40 to 50 centimeters, or about 16 to 20 inches at the shoulder. The weight of a female ranges about 7 to 12 kilograms, or 15 to 26 pounds in males. And males get to about 8 to 18. So females about 7 to 12, males to 8 to 18 kilograms, or 18 to 40 pounds. And they can often be confused with the margay on the Uncilla, although the ocelot is notably larger and heavier with a shorter tail than both those species. Although all three have rosettes on their coats, these guys have more of a blotch pattern. The Uncilla has a bit of a dark spots on its underbelly like the other two. And other differences lie in the facial markings, and they're quite similar in size to actually a bobcat, though they can get larger than bobcats. So in terms of their range, they do have quite a wide range. They are found from the southwestern United States to northern Argentina, and up to elevations about 3,000 meters. In the United States, they occur from Texas to Arizona, but they have been extirpated from Louisiana and Arkansas. And there's actually been fossils of ocelots found in Florida, which is quite cool. They typically inhabit tropical forests, thorn forests, mangrove swamps, and savannas. In the Amazon rainforest, they tend to prefer habitats with availability of prey and water, and tend to avoid other predators. It favours areas with dense forest cover and water sources, far from roads and human settlements, avoiding steep slopes and highly elevated areas. In areas where ocelots coexist with large predators such as cougars and humans, they tune their active hours to avoid them, typically, trying to just avoid them and seek dense cover to avoid that competition. They can adapt quite well to their surroundings as well. Factors other than the aforementioned are not really significant. Really, other habitat loss is really affecting them. And they do share a large part of their range with animals such as jaguars, jaguarundi, margays, ocelot, and cougars. So in terms of their behavior, these guys are usually solitary species, active mainly during twilight or at night. Actually, some radio-collared individuals in Peru actually rested during the day and became active earliest in late afternoon, and moved between 3.2 to 17 hours until dawn, and then they returned to their dens. So during the daytime, they rest in trees or in dens below large trees or other cool sheltered areas on the ground. They are quite agile and good at climbing, and they're also effective swimmers as well, which is quite cool. They typically, like other cats, will scent mark their territory with brain urine, where the territory of males tends to be between 3.5 to 46 kilometers, or 1.4 to 7.8 square miles large, while females have a range covering 0.8 to 15 kilometers, or about 3.1 to 5 square miles. Territories of females rarely overlap, but the territory of a male will overlap with many females, or 2 or 3 females. Social interaction between sexes are minimal, though a few adults have been observed together even in non-mating periods, and some juveniles together interact with their parents. And data from camera trapping suggests that several ocelot individuals will deposit scat in one or several communal sites called latrines, and they can be quite aggressive, actually, defending their territory, even potentially fighting to the death. A population density of ocelots has been observed to be high in areas with high rainfall, but tend to decrease with increasing latitude. So highest densities are typically found around the tropics, and as you go more north or more south, it gets less and less. Potential predators of the ocelot in Texas includes the coyote, the cougar, and the American alligator, while kittens can be vulnerable to raptors, such as the great horned owls, as well as feral pigs, snakes, and feral dogs. Studies actually have found that adult ocelots are prey to both cougars and jaguars, which is interesting as well. But in terms of diet, like other cats, they tend to follow scent trails, and they have a walking speed of about 0.3 kilometers per hour. And alternatively, they may wait for prey to 30-60 minutes at a certain site and wait for them to kind of come past. An ocelot typically prefers hunting in areas with vegetation cover, avoiding open areas, especially on moonlit nights, as not to be seen by their prey. As a carnivore, they tend to eat small terrestrial mammals such as rodents, lagomorphs, armadillos, and opossums, but also will feed on fish, crustaceans, insects, reptiles, and birds, and usually feeds on the kill immediately, but actually is one of the few cats who will actually worry about plucking the feathers off them. They typically prey on animals that weigh less than a kilogram, or under 2 pounds, but really target large ungulates such as deer, sheep, peccaries, as well as anteaters, earwort monkeys, and iguanas. And they require about 600 to 800 grams, or 21 to 25 ounces of food every day to satisfy the energy requirements. So primates actually prevail in the diets of ocelots in southeastern Brazil, and iguanas are in the tropical deciduous forests of Mexico. And again, it depends. Some areas they'll feed on rodents in the dry season. In Venezuela, they'll feed on rodents in the dry season, then switch to land crabs in the wet season. So it kind of just depends. And in areas where they in southeast Brazil, where they live with margays and ocellas, they actually try to focus. The ocellas actually will focus on marsupials and birds, while these guys will kind of just take those bigger things because they are bigger. So let's have a look at the cute little baby, looky little kitten. You know, we love to have a looky little kitten. How adorable is this little guy? Anyway, so in terms of their reproduction, both male and female ocelots will produce a long-range yowl during the mating season and a short-range meow. Ocelots can mate any time during the year, and the peak mating season varies geographically. Within Argentina and Peru, the peaks will be about autumn, and Mexico and Texas, it'll be autumn and winter. Estrus lasts about 4 to 5 days and recurs every 25 days for a non-pregnant female. A study in southern Brazil shows that sperm production in ocelots, margays, and ocellas actually peaks in summer, and when mating, captive ocelots will spend more time together, stamp marking, and eating less. So in terms of the female, she'll give birth to a litter of about 1 to 3 kittens after a gestation period of about 2 to 3 months. Dens usually are located in dense vegetation, with a newborn being about 200 to 340 grams, or about 7 to 12 ounces when born. And the kittens are born with spots and stripes, though on a grey background, but they change to golden as they get older. Actually, a study looking into southern Texas ocelots revealed that a mother keeps a litter in a den for 13 to 64 days and will shift the young between 2 or 3 dens. The kittens then open their eyes about 15 to 18 days after birth, and kittens then begin to leave the den at the age of 3 months. They remain with their mother for up to about 2 years, and then they start dispersing and establishing their own territories. Though in comparison to other felids, they actually have a relatively long duration between births and a narrow litter size. So they tend to invest a little bit more in their babies compared to a lot of other species. And they can live in captivity up to about 20 years. So in terms of their threats, throughout their range, they are threatened by loss of habitat and fragmentation of their habitat. So in Texas, a lot of the fertile lands that kind of was the best habitat for them was lost to agriculture. Other things like traffic accidents, logging and poaching is another thing. A big fur trade as well that's affected this species as well. And also the international pet trade, as people will often go out and catch ocelots, kill the mothers and then take the kittens to be sold to tourists, which is very sad. But overall, they are considered least concern. They are doing quite well. They have a wide distribution, and there's a lot. Hunting is mostly banned, and estimates of the wild population is thought to be about more than 40,000 mature individuals. But in some areas, they're obviously not doing too well. As I mentioned, they had been extirpated from some places in North America. And also in Texas and northeast Mexico, their populations have reduced drastically, with the population estimated to be in Texas about 50 to 80 individuals, and these reduced numbers have led to low genetic diversity and inbreeding. So they're trying to conserve this population as well, and they're doing quite well in captivity. In terms of their culture impact, though, they have been associated with humans since the Aztec and Incan times. That they depict ocelots a lot in their mythology. They kind of draw them and paint them, and the ocelot bones are usually made to make instruments for bloodletting as well. So there's a lot of really cool kind of myths and things as well. And like other species of cats, they have been kept as pets, and there's a lot of demand on them because they're not like a domestic cat. They can be troublesome. They like to leap, and they're much bigger than a normal domestic cat, so they can injure an owner quite severely. So if you're going to get an ocelot, you've got to really think about it. But yeah, another really cool species that we get to talk about. So let's have a look at the Zoopedia. See least concern, population about 30,000. You can see their range there. So basically from up there to down here. Population 1 to 2 makes sense. Male bachelor group size 1-1. Dominance none. Polygamous yes. Solitary, so all mature offspring will come outsiders. Relationship to humans shy. Quests will flee from them, even though a lot of people probably want to pet them. Kind of, yeah, right there we said 45-50 centimeters at shoulder, and we kind of got all those right there when we talked about it. Age sexual maturity, 2.5 years. They have babies till they die. 1 to 3 cubs per mating mate. That's pretty much right. All kittens. 2-month birth period. It's a little bit longer than normal, and then you've got this one, and they're actually quite difficult to breed in captivity as well. So ocelot mothers, as we mentioned that, up to 5 times due to protecting predators. The ocelot's Latin name, Leopardus paradus, which means like a leopard, because it is a lot like a leopard, but it's not a leopard. Unlike most cats, ocelots will skin and pluck their prey before eating it. They are excellent jumpers and climbers. They depend heavily on trees and shrubs to hunt and shelter in their arboreal lifestyle. And as I mentioned, they have been occasionally kept as pets. Famously, Spanish painter Salvador Dali had two pet ocelots named Babu and Boba. So that's another really cute one. Yeah, really, really awesome. So another cool cat that we got here, and I know they can swim as well. Apparently, let's see if they can get them to swim, but they're not too interested at the moment. But we've got another animal that would really love a good swim. Next up, we've got we're going to the dogs now. We have got the bush dog. So another really cool one I've been wanting for a while. A really cool animal. So we hear the bush dog. So the bush dog, or Spinolis ventalis, these guys are a canid that is from South America. And in spite of its extensive range, it's actually very rare in most of its range, except for Suriname, Guyana, and Peru. And it was first described by Peter Wilhelm Lude from fossils, and the animal was actually believed to be originally extinct, and then it was found alive, so that's quite cool. And they're actually the only extant species in their genus Spatholus, and genetic evidence suggests that their closest living relative is the Maine wolf or the African wild dog. So that shows how independent they are from a lot of other animals as well. We'll have a look at this one swimming, because I think it's cool that we get a dog that actually deep dives, and I think that's so cool to talk about. Anyway, in other kind of Brazil, they're called the Caravarangue, which means kind of vinegar dog. But other places, they're called all sorts of different names, that kind of a variant of bush dog and things like that. Oh, what are you floating in the middle of the air? Oh, yeah. You can see you diving. How cool is that? Anyway, we have got here a description of the adult bush dog. So they have a short, long, brownish, a soft, long, brownish tan fur with a lightest reddish tinge to their head, as you can kind of see going on there. Where the underside is dark, sometimes with a lighter throat patch, though younger individuals will have black fur all over their body. Adults have a typical head to body length of about 57 to 75 centimeters, or about 22 to 30 inches, with a 12 to 15 centimeter or 5 to 6 inch tail. They also have a shoulder height about 20 to 30 centimeters, or about 8 to 12 inches, and weigh between 5 to 8 kilograms, or 11 to 18 pounds. They have short legs relative to their bodies. You know, they look almost like a wolverine. But short legs, as well as a short snout and small ears. The teeth are well adapted for their carnivorous habits. And uniquely for an American canid, they have 38 teeth. And they're one of the three species of canid, the other being the dhole and the African wild dog, to have stringent heel dentition, having a single cusp on the taloid and of the lower carnassial teeth, which increases actually the blade length. So that shows they're a bit more adapted and really good at eating meat. Females have 4 pairs of teats, and both sexes have large scent glands on either side of the anus that allows them to, scent mark and patrol their territories. And they also, as you can kind of see here, they have partially webbed toes, and that allows them to swim quite efficiently. So they're quite good swimmers, and that's why they're good swimmers in here. So in terms of distribution, they are found from Costa Rica in Central America and throughout most of South America east of the Andes, and can be found as far south as Bolivia, Paraguay, and southern Brazil. They primarily inhabit lowland forests up to about 1,900 meters elevation, also wet savannas near rivers, but also be found in open pasture and dry cerrados. The historical range may have actually extended as far north as Costa Rica, where the species may still be found in suitable habitat. Though new reported observation of bush dogs have been reported in east central and southeastern Costa Rica, so there's going to be populations here as well. And there's actually fossil evidence that was between 300 and 900 AD that they will be found in Trinidad. And there's 3 recognized subspecies, but I don't know how actually true they are, but we'll get into that. So in terms of their behavior, bush dogs are carnivores and hunt during the day. They typically prey on packers, agoutis, and capybaras, which are all large rodents. Although they can hunt alone, they typically tend to hunt in small packs, and in these packs they can bring down much larger prey, such as peccaries and rheas. And a pack of 6 dogs has even been reported hunting a 250 kilogram or 550 pound tapir, where they tailed the animal and nipped in its legs until it fell. While hunting packer, a part of the pack actually chases on land and part of it wait of the water when it often retreats. So often animals go into the water, then there'll be bush dogs waiting, to eat them. So bush dogs appear to be the most gregarious South American canid species, so the most, one that likes to live in a group. They use hollow logs and cavities, such as armadillo burrows, for shelter, Packs typically consist of a single mated pair and their immediate relations, and they have a home range of about 3.8 to 10 square kilometers, or about 1.5 to 3.9 square miles. And only typically the adult pair breed. So very similar things like wolves and coyotes, or the other members of the pack are subordinate and helping with rearing and guarding pups. Pack mates will keep in contact with frequent winds, perhaps due because visibility is poor on the undergrowth, and while eating large prey, parents position themselves at the either end of the animal, which makes it easier for the pups to disembowel it. In terms of the reproduction, though, we'll have a look at their cute little babies, because they're very cute little babies. And I like how they just splooge like that. It's very, very funny. Here's a little baby. Look at how cute this little guy is. Anyway, bush dogs mate throughout the year, with estrus lasting up to about 12 days, and it occurs every 15 to 44 days. Like in many other canids, bush dogs kind of mating includes a copulatory tie where they're locked together, and urine marking actually plays a significant part in that copulatory behaviour. Gestation lasts for about 65 to 83 days and normally will result in the birth of a litter between 3 to 6 pups, although larger litters up to 10 have been reported. The young are blind and helpless and initially weigh about 125 to 190 grams, or 4.4 to 6.7 ounces. The eyes open at about 6 to 19 days, and the pups first emerge from their native den shortly thereafter. The young are weaned at about 4 weeks old, and they reach sexual maturity about a year old, and they can live up to about 10 years in captivity. So, as I mentioned before, they're actually one of the least studied canids in the world. As I mentioned, they were already thought to be extinct until they were found alive, so they're not really that well known. They're among the least studied canids, and the conservation efforts are in early stages. Due to their rarity, as I mentioned, they were mistakenly believed to be extinct and then found later alive. Research shows they are generalists, capable of thriving in diverse habitats. However, conservation is challenging due to their dense habitats and sparse, scattered populations that makes them difficult to locate. Bush dogs require large, undisturbed territories that support their pack-based lifestyle, and they're notably shy. They are considered near threatened due to a population decline that has been approximately about 25% over the past 12 years, with their main threats including habitat loss because of deforestation, loss of prey due to human hunting, and potential disease from domestic dogs. Habitat loss seems to be the most significant threat as well, while disease transmission from unvaccinated dogs have been actually a growing concern because of humans. Luckily, in most of their range, hunting them is illegal, and they try to but to help better understand them, they try to monitor them, like using camera traps and things like that. So definitely a species that they're really trying to learn more about, but luckily they are protected in most of their range, and they seem to be relatively common. We just don't know that much about them. But yeah, really, really cool species. We are going to carry on and have a look at there. So populations, 110,000. So you can see their range there from Costa Rica. Group size, 2 to 12, so it could be up to 11 males and 11 females. That's the packs, so 2 to 4, 2 to 4. Family pack, led by an alpha pair. Monogamous, gregarious as well. Their relationship with humans is neutral, and guests flee from them. So I don't know why, because they're quite cute. Anyway, about 65 centimeters long. About 20 years, that's kind of a bit long, as I mentioned, up to 10 years, and 6.5 kilograms is that. Age of maturity is 2 years, they have babies up until about 10. Number of offspring is 1 to 5, so that makes sense. Incubation period is about 2 months, so that's about, 60, 70 days, probably could be a little bit longer. Interbirth period is about 4 months, and they're easy to bring in captivity. So let's have a look at some facts. Bush dogs are excellent swimmers, they have webbed feet, and a pack that used to prey their prey underwater and then surround them. They are more strictly carnivorous than other canids, so they actually are a hypercarnivore. The bush dog is an elusive species that's only become more widely known in the past 30 years. Anecdotal evidence from native people and scatological evidence is actually the best information that we get about the species. So basically, the best way we know about it is people, natives seeing them and poo. They're also the smallest pack hunting canid, and also known as the vinegar dog because their scent has actually been likened to vinegar. So that's quite cool. They don't share any species that they like to live with. But yeah, another really, really cool one. I like these guys. Definitely a big fan. So last but certainly not least, we've got a big one here for today. I said I'd cover this one in a bit more detail because I've already covered the Coyote a few times. Well, this is the last time we'll cover it because now it's officially in the game. We have got here the Coyote. So nice to see the Coyote. Really, really cool animal. I know a lot of people were a little bit weird about it being added to the game, but still a really cool species. And it deserves, a good place. It's quite common. The coyote, or Canis latans, also known as the American jackal, the prairie wolf, or the bush wolf, a species of canid that lives in native to North America. They are smaller than its closest relative, the grey wolf, and slightly smaller than the eastern and red wolf. And they fit very much a similar ecological niche that golden jackals do in Eurasia, even though they are larger. So in terms of their description, coyotes males average about 8 to 20 kilograms, or 18 to 44 pounds in weight, while females are generally 7 to 18 kilograms, or 15 to 40 pounds in weight, though their size varies a lot geographically, with northern subspecies or northern populations tending to be bigger than the southern subspecies in Mexico. Total length ranges is about 1 to 1.35 meters, or 3.3 feet 3 inches, or 4 feet 5 inches, and they have a tail length of about 40 centimeters. The largest coyote ever recorded was about 4'11", or 1.5 meters long, and weighed about 32 kilograms. So in terms of the color and texture of these wolves' fur, it actually varies a lot geographically. So their predominant colors tend to be light gray or red, interspersed with some black and white. But coyotes living in high elevations tend to be more black and grey than their desert-dwelling counterparts, that tend to be a bit more flavorous or kind of whitish grey. And they tend to have a short, soft underfur, and then have long, coarse guard hairs. And the fur of northern subspecies tend to be longer and denser than southern forms, which makes sense because got to keep cool, got to keep warm. Though generally adult coyotes, including coy wolf hybrids, have a stable coat color, bushy tail, and then they actually have an active subocaudal gland and like a white facial mask. And albinism is extremely rare in coyotes, and out of the total of 750,000 coyotes killed by federal and cooperative hunters between March 1938 and June 1945, only 2 of them were albinos. In terms of the body, though, as well, the coyotes tend to be typically smaller than grey wolf, but they have longer ears and a relatively larger brain case, which means they have also thinner face and muzzle. And the scent glands are also smaller than the grey wolves, but the same colour, and they have the kind of much less varied fur colour than a wolf as well. In terms of the history, by the time colonists came to America, coyotes were actually largely confined to the western open plains and regions of the western half of the continent. And they kind of would go on describing about wolves. They were first described by naturalist Thomas Say in 1819, and they were kind of referred to as the prairie wolf, or Canis nublaris, which was kind of something like that, but then they're called Canis latans, which is interesting. So its naming and entomology, the first use of the word coyote comes from historical Francisco Javier Carreras, who was in 1780 used it as the coyote. And alternate names, as I mentioned, like case wolf, little wolf, American jackal, and other words for it. In terms of what it's related to, the evolution of the coyote. So they believe the coyote is actually a descendant from a coyote-like animal called the Usayon davisoni, which was first found in the Miocene about 6 million years ago, found in Mexico and the southern US. And then by the Pliocene, the larger Canis leophagus was actually found in the early Pleistocene, and then by the early Pleistocene, we had the coyote as we know it today. And they seem to be claimed to some other different species of American, species of Canis at that time. And Coleophagus was actually quite similar to modern coyotes, but they had shorter limb bones, which means they were probably a little bit more less adapted for running around in the open. They were more adapted for close habitats. This coyote also represents a more primitive form of Canis than the grey wolf, as they have a sort of small size and narrow skull. They're not quite as hyper adapted for carnivory that wolves are, as these guys can be a little bit more generalist in their habits, and more like a fox or a jackal than a wolf, which is a hyper carnivore. The oldest fossils of that fall within the range of modern coyotes is about 0.74 to 0.85 million years ago. And modern coyotes arose about 1,000 years after the Continuum event. So if you compare a modern coyote to a Pleistocene coyote from about 10,000, 12,000 years ago, the Pleistocene coyotes tend to be larger and more robust, which was likely in response to larger competitors. And Pleistocene ones are likely more specialized, as their teeth are more adapted for sharing meat. And then kind of as they went extinct, the reduction in size actually occurred about 1,000 years ago, and their large prey would have died out. So they kind of got smaller to better cope, and they became a little bit more omnivorous. And Pleistocene coyotes were actually unable to exploit that big game hunting niche after the dire wolf went extinct because the grey wolf kind of came in and took over that. So they didn't get to bulk up and become the American wolf kind of thing again. In terms of DNA evidence as well, there's actually studies that propose that the wolves in North America display skull traits more similar to coyote than those of the wolves of Eurasia. And a study found that the coyote is a basal member of the clade that includes the Tibetan wolf, the domestic dog, the Mongolian wolf, and the Eurasian wolf. So they seem to be quite basal in the group of Canis. So Canis is very much, very nebulous genus. And they have been shown to interbreed quite a lot with different species, even like wolves, and there's even the hypothesis that eastern and red wolves are just descendants or hybrids or descendants of hybrids of coyotes and wolves, grey wolves. And there's lots of different subspecies. A lot of them are based on coats, because that's what they used to do back then. It was all mythology, but genetically I imagine they'd all be pretty similar. And as I mentioned, they have been known to hybridize with domestic dogs occasionally, and also wolves, and create these different types of hybrids and things like that. And eastern and red wolves are thought to also be products of varying degrees of wolf-coyote hybridization, because we do know that they did hybridize a lot historically, and that's kind of how they adapted and may become a species, may potentially become a hybrid species. But a lot of these coyotes tend to be, or coy wolves, tend to reach sexual maturity at 2 years of age, which is later than western coyotes, eastern coyotes and western coyotes. So there's some differences between them, especially western and eastern, because they hybridize a little bit more with wolves, which is interesting. But for the most part, they tend to do fine. In terms of behavior, we'll talk about them. Like the European golden jackal, they are quite gregarious, but they're not dependent on each other like more social canid species like wolves are. They are not a specialized hunter of a large game. So the basic kind of social unit of a coyote pack is a family containing a reproductive female. However, unrelated coyotes may join forces for companionship or to bring down larger prey. Such non-family packs are typically temporary, and they may consist of bachelor males, non-reproductive females, and subadult young. And families are formed in midwinter when females enter estrus, and pair bonding can occur to 3 months before actual copulation takes place. And like other species that the copulatory tie, that tie lasts about 5 to 45 minutes, and the female will enter estrus, will attract males by scent marking and howling. And a single female in heat can attract up to 7 males, who will follow her as long as a month. And although some squabbling may appear once the female has selected their mate, the males will not intervene. That have been rejected do not intervene. And unlike the wolf, they have been known to practice both monogamous and bigamous matings. These coyotes are actually strictly monogamous, which is very interesting. Females will fail to mate, sometimes assist their sisters or mothers in raising their pups, or join their siblings until next time they can mate. And a newly mated pair will establish a territory, and they will often dig out a den of like an abandoned badger, marmoset, or skunk kind of den or burrow. During the pregnancy, the male will frequently hunt alone and bring back food with the female, and the female will lie in a den which has got filled with grass, but also fur that's pulled off her belly, which is quite cute. And typically the gestation period for these little guys is about 63 days, and they have an average litter of about 6 cubs. The number typically fluctuates. So these pups are born in a den, hot trees or under ledges, and are born at about 200 to 500 grams, or 0.44 to 1.10 pounds. They are born artificial and are completely independent on milk for the first 10 days of life. Gene sizes will erupt at about 12 days, and canines at 16, and their secondary mole is about 21. Their eyes open after 10 days, and they become more mobile. They walk at about 20 days and start running at about the age of 6 weeks. So the parents begin supplementing their pup's diet with regurgitated solid food after about 12 to 15 days, and by age of 4 to 6 weeks, when their milk teeth are fully functional, the pups are given small food items such as rats, mice, and pieces of ungulate carcasses, and then are kind of weaned off. Unlike wolf pups, they actually tend to quite seriously fight with each other, and they often hip slam each other, and they'll even start to bite each other, with less inhibition than wolf pups. And by ages 4 to 5, they tend to try to establish dominant hierarchies within their kind of group, and then they're more likely to play rather than fight. The male plays an active role in feeding, grooming, and guarding the pups, but if abandons them if the female goes missing, before the pups are completely weaned, because what's he going to do? Den is abandoned by June to July, and the pups follow their parents in patrolling the territory hunting. And pups may actually leave their family in August, though they can remain for much longer. The pups attain adult dimensions at about 8 months, and then gain adult weight about a month later. So in terms of their sheltering and hunting behaviours, these guys do have quite a wide territory that ranges from being 0.4 to 62 square kilometres, or 0.15 to 24 square miles, with a general coloration of coyotes in a given area depending on food abundance, den sites, and competition from other predators. They generally do not defend its territory outside of the denning season and are much less aggressive to intruders than wolves are, and they'll actually typically try and chase or spar with intruders rather than killing them, but rarely killing them. And conflicts between coyotes can arise during times of food shortage, and they mark their territory using urination and ground scratching. And unlike wolves, coyotes will use a den, usually the deserted holes of other species when gestating and rearing young. They may usually give birth in the sage bushes in the open. These dens can be located in canyons, washouts, coves, banks, rock bluffs, and level ground. Some dens have actually been found under abandoned homestead shacks, grain bins, drainage pipes, railroad tracks, hollow logs, thickets, and thistles. The den is continuously dug and cleaned up by the female until the pups are born. And should the den be disturbed or infected with fleas, the pups are then moved to another den. And a coyote den can have several entrances and passages branching out through there, and the single den is typically used year after year. So in terms of hunting and feeding behavior, while the popular consensus that olfaction is very important, 2 studies show that they tend to rely on visual cues more than kind of smell, which is interesting. When hunting large prey, they'll often work in pairs and small groups, and success in killing large ungulates can depend on things like snow depth or crust density. Younger animals tend to avoid participating in such hunts, and the breeding pair typically does most of the work. The coyotes pursue the large prey and try to hamstring it, and subsequently harass it until kind of prey falls. And like other canines, they will cache excessive food, and they will also catch mouse-sized rodents by pouncing, where the ground squirrels are chased. And although they can live in large groups, small prey is typically taken singly. They've also been known to kill porcupines in pairs, as they use their paws to flip the rodent on its back, then attack its soft underbelly. Though only old and experienced coyotes have been known to kill porcupines, as young porcupines tend to get injured, and they do sometimes urinate on their food to kind of claim ownership. And some recent evidence suggests that at least some coyotes are becoming nocturnal to avoid humans. Coyotes may occasionally actually form mutualistic hunting relationships with American badgers as well, and assisting them to dig up rodent prey. The relationship between these 2 species may occasionally border to apparent friendship, quote-unquote, as some coyotes have been observed laying their heads on the badger companion or licking their face without protest, which is quite interesting. And the interaction between these 2 species has actually been were known to pre-Columbian civilizations, and was shown in a jar dated to about 300 CE, which is quite funny. But in terms of communication, they are quite a vocal and expressive species. In terms of body language, they tend to be a little bit more intermediate between solitary foxes and the highly social wolf. The aggressive behavior of the coyote tends to be more similar to foxes than it does to wolves and dogs. They tend to lower their tail and play bow and things as well. So they kind of like an in-between the solitary fox and the very social wolves. They tend to do like things like play leaps and play bounds and do spins and dives and things like that. And pups fight each other regardless of sex, while among adults, aggression is typically reserved for safe-sex members of the pack. And combatants are usually approached by waving their tails at each other and snapping the ground, though fights are typically silent. Fights against females tend to actually be more serious than ones against males, and they'll actually go for their throats and shoulders and forelegs of their opponents. Though in terms of vocalizations, they're actually called one of the most vocal of all North American mammals. And the loudest and range of their kind of vocalizations have also gave them the name Canis latans, which means barking dog. They have at least 11 different kinds of different vocalizations in adult coyotes. That range from alarm greetings and greeting and contact greetings that include woofs, growls, huffs, barks, bark howls, yelps, and whines. Woofs are actually used in low-intensity threats and things like that. Growls used in threats at short distance, but they may be heard among pups playing. And huffs tend to be high kind of intensity vocalizations. And yelps will be a sign of submission. And whining can be, another one is using submission as well. In terms of their habitats, though, prior to the near extinction of wolves and coyotes, These guys were most numerous in wetlands that included bison, pronghorn, and elk, and other deer, doing particularly well in short grass areas with prairie dogs, but they were just most of the time in semi-arid areas as well, with jackrabbits and rattlesnakes and things like that. As long as there was no direct competition with the wolf, uh, the coyotes ranged from the Sonoran Desert to the alpine areas of the adjoining mountains as well. And they actually, with the extermination of wolf, their range is actually extended greatly because they've got no competition. They can be found into Guatemala, and they're actually found now up to Alaska. So coyotes walk about 5 to 16 kilometers or 3 to 10 miles per day along trails such as logging roads and paths, and may use iced over rivers to travel routes in winter. They are often crepuscular, being more active around evening and the beginning of night than during the day. However, in urban areas, coyotes are known to be nocturnal, likely to avoid humans. In terms of their diet, these guys are, as I mentioned, the equivalent of the jackal, so they're quite generalist. They're highly versatile, but they are primarily carnivorous. Prey species include mostly scavenging on bison, white-tailed deer, mule deer, moose, elk, pronghorn, bighorn sheep, rabbits, hares, rodents, birds, especially things like roadrunners and galliforms and pigeons and doves. Amphibians except toads, lizards, snakes, turtles, and tortoises, but pretty much everything around there. So a lot of the terrestrial burrowing small mammals tend to be favourites. So things like kangaroo rats and voles and pocket gophers. Other things more like rabbits, like cottontail rabbits and things like that. Yes, more unusual prey actually includes fishes, young cubs, seals, and rattlesnakes as well. And they've been known to take birds ranging from larks up to adult wild turkeys, and even sometimes, if you're very lucky, adult pelicans and swans. Though when working in a pack, they can kill quite big things. They can take various prey weighing more than 10 kilograms. In some cases, they've been known to kill adult white-tailed deer, cow elk, pronghorns, and wild sheep, although young fawn and calves and lambs tend to be quite easier. And they've even been known to take down domestic cattle as well. In some cases, coyotes can bring down prey up to about 200 kgs. And when it comes to adult ungulates as well, they often try and tire them out and kind of get them as when their areas are sick. Otherwise, they're winter weakened or heavily pregnant. That's when they kind of try and get them. While coyotes tend to prefer fresh meat, they will scavenge if the opportunity brings itself. Excluding the insects, they will eat lots of grass and things like that. And they typically require about 600 grams or about a pound of food daily, and will eat 550 pounds or 250 kilos of food annually. So the coyote will regularly cannibalize the carcasses of conpacifics, and coyote's fat has been used as coyote hunters as lures or bait. It's interesting as well. They'll also feed on a variety of produce such as strawberries, blackberries, blueberries, peaches, apples, prickly pears, watermelons, and carrots. And they'll eat things like maize and things like that. So they're quite generous in that regard. And even in coastal California, coyotes now consume a higher percentage of marine-based food than their ancestors, which is thought to be due to the extinction of the grizzly bears of the region, which is quite interesting. In terms of competitors, though, they do have enemies. They're in the areas where wolves and coyotes overlap. They tend to limit the populations of coyotes. But with the extirpation of wolves from most of their range in America, the coyotes have kind of come and stepped up and kind of moved to all sorts of different areas, as I mentioned, as far south as Guatemala, as far north as Alaska. So that was kind of their main competition gone. Coyotes also may compete with cougars, but they tend to hunt different things. Cougars normally dominate them and sometimes kill them occasionally, so they reduce their predation coyote pressure on smaller animals as well. So kind of how that works out. Other than grey wolves, predation on adult coyotes is pretty rare, but they have been known to be preyed upon by American black bears and grizzly bears, American alligators, large Canada lynx, and golden eagles. So for the most part, adult is safe in terms of predators. They also rarely kill adult red foxes and have been found in feed or den alongside them, which is interesting. They also frequently kill grey foxes, which is a smaller canid from them. They also do share their range with bobcats, though they typically really physically confront one another. But bobcat populations tend to diminish in areas with high coyote densities, which is interesting as well. And the coyote attacks by an unknown a number of coyotes or adult male bobcats have occurred. In California, coyote and bobcat populations are actually not negatively correlated with habitat types, but predation by coyotes there's an important sense for mortality on bobcats. So it shows all those different relationships. There also have been observed to see kill Canada lynx and compete with them for show hares, which is kind of one of the big things they eat. Yeah, as I mentioned, their range, they typically, their wide range are considered least concern. Their pre-Columbian range was kind of limited to the southwest and plains region of North America and northern and central Mexico. But due to the extinction of extirpation of wolves from a lot of these areas, they managed to expand down south as far south as Guatemala and as north as Alaska. And it was actually once, although it was widely believed that there were recent immigrants from Mexico and Central America, early Pleistocene and Holocene records suggest that they were present long before that. And range expansion during the late 1970s, early 1980s was kind of because of people, which is interesting as well. In terms of their relationship with humans, they do have a very interesting relationship with humans. In folklore, coyotes were kind of considered like a bad guy, or like a trickster figure, almost like a Loki. So they were often considered tricksters. They have been known to they don't really attack humans often, but they have been known to attack humans. There have been only 2 confirmed fatal attacks of coyotes on people, but 2 of them. One of them was on a 3-year-old girl, and the other one was on a 19-year-old girl. So not really going out and killing people, but they have been known to bite people, and potentially about 60 attacks or something happens. In the absence of harassment of coyote by rural people, they actually will lose their fear of humans in urban areas, and they actually start to become more aggressive towards humans. So that's actually quite a bad thing. And because of livestock and pet predation, they are kind of villainized. They're often kind of seen as a bad animal, and often I've heard an anecdote from one of the American friends I had. Like if they hear a coyote yell, howl in Texas, it'll be dead the next morning because there's just not a lot of love for these coyotes. And they were responsible, believed in 2004, the deaths of about 2,224 sheep. So they do prey on livestock regularly. And because they are much more common than wolves, they tend to be responsible for most of the livestock deaths. And livestock guardian dogs have been used to repel them as well. But rewilding cattle has also kind of helped as well to kind of control coyotes. They typically bite the throat when attacking adult sheep or goats, and they typically will kill by suffocation as well. And actually, one location as well, they're attracted to dog food, and tracks has been important. They tend to leave more oval-shaped tracks and things like that. Also have been known to attract dog food or animals that are small enough to be prey. So cats typically do not survive attacks by coyotes. And actually, one area in South Coyote, coyotes actually been relying on a colony of feral cats as a food source. And over time, the coyotes killed most of the cats and then continued the cat food placed daily on the colony, while people were people who were maintaining the cat colony. So they killed most of the cats and then started eating their food to sustain themselves. So it's really interesting. And they do attack similar-sized dogs or smaller-sized dogs, and have been known to attack breeds such as Rottweilers in extreme cases. The dogs larger than coyotes, such as greyhounds, are typically able to dry them off. In terms of hunting, they are quite commonly hunted. There's not many regulations on it, and they often will trap or call or hound call them as well. So they're very light and very animals that are very much able to go around and do their own thing. So they're very much they're considered quite common as well. So they're basically hunted with impunity. And prior to the mid-19th century, they actually were considered their fur was considered worthless, and this changed with the kind of main extirpation of beavers, and the hunting of coyotes became a great source of income. And they were occasionally eaten by trappers as well and things like that. But that was a two as well. And there was some talk, about people like training them and trying to taming them. And I believe it's possible, full-blooded and hybrid coyotes kind of can be playful with owners and things like that. Any animal can be tamed, but that's quite cool. Yeah, they're quite common in culture. There's the Daily Coyote, Wile E. Coyote and Looney Tunes. So they're quite common in American culture as well, and global culture. But yeah, really, really cool species. I really like to see a coyote. I know a lot of people were not too keen on seeing it, but let's have a look at the estimated in millions. Is concerned. You can see their range. It used to be just pretty much there, but now they've spread out a lot further. Pack 2 to 12. 2 to 12, 2 to 12, depending on what it is, jet sex. Pairs led by alpha male and female. Monogamous, gregarious, confident with humans, and yes, flee from them, even though they're quite cute. Size is about right. Age is about right. 11. The male's a little bit bigger. Sexual maturity is about a year old. Sterility is when they die. 2 to 6 pups per mating event. 2 months, that's about right. Interbirth periods 10 months, and easy breeding capacity. That's about right. So in urban areas, road collisions are the case of 40 to 70% of coyote deaths. They provide excellent pest control in both urban and rural areas, as they primarily feed on small rodents such as rabbits, rats, and mice. That's also true. The eastern coyote, a subspecies of coyote found in the northeastern USA and Canada, is a hybrid of coyotes and grey wolves. Don't know what I'd say about that. That could be a bit controversial. The common name coyote is adapted from the Aztec Nahuatl word coyotl, and coyotes can interbreed with domestic dogs, and it often happens when coyotes expand into new areas, and domestic dogs are the only available mates, because, beggars can't be choosers. But, yeah, another really cool one. So, yeah, that's everyone covered from the America's Animal Pack. Really big fan of it. As I mentioned in my kind of review, I think that maybe there could have been another animal swapped out, like a coyote could have been a better replacement for the coyote or something like that. But I think overall it is a pretty good pack. It introduces some really cool animals. Maybe another monkey. But it's cool that we got animals like the bush dog. That's definitely a cool one. Bighorn sheep's another cool one. Especially the highlights, though, I think, are kind of the bush dog and the Saki, because we need another monkey. And I love a dog that's a bit different. And we nice to get a couple more birds, too. Especially the Rhea. It's nice to get a couple of different things. And, we all love cats. So there's not really never a bad animal pick. But I would have picked maybe a coyote over a coyote. That's probably the only real major change to make. And maybe, the Bighorn sheep is literally just a doll sheep, but brown. So maybe replace that with something else. But I think overall it's still a good pack, awesome to see. Some more animals getting included. But, yeah, this is a great time to end the video. So I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. Always look at the little bell icons, get notified about anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hope you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.